Welcome to Family Peace Initiative's Curriculum Blips. In this podcast, we provide fast and easy resources for facilitators using the FPI suite of curricula to help you prepare before stepping into a group room. Whether you're brand new to BIP facilitation or using drive time to refresh yourself on familiar concepts, these blips are intended to help you get in the right frame of mind as you head into group. You'll hear from seasoned staff and FPI curricula authors on the key concepts and goals of each lesson, as well as what to expect from group members in these conversations. In this episode, we're continuing Section 2. Steve Halley, co-founder and co-director of the Family Peace Initiative, guides us through Lesson 2 of this section, The Painful Shift. Let's hear from Steve.
Week 2 of Section 2, we start the conversation of the painful shift. We've just introduced people to their values, and we want to build on that foundation by normalizing the process of how people come into our classes, how people hopefully might end our classes, and the journey through life to, as Alice Miller says, get our perfection back. And we start by talking about how people come to class. We introduce the painful shift as that there's a pre-painful shift and then a post-painful shift. But that's really a misnomer. There's not a post-painful shift. I think it's just you keep shifting. There's still a continued shifting towards something better. So it's a process. It's not an event, and in theory, people are starting the painful shift process by coming to the Family Peace Initiative and deciding to participate for 27 weeks. But in this class, what we're wanting to do is kind of lay out and normalize what people do when they come to class, what are some of their protective behaviors, and what are we hoping to help them be able to do by the time that they are done. One of the easiest ways to develop the pre-painful shift list is to ask people and get into a conversation about what was it like for you when you first came to class? What are some things that you said? What were some things you thought about? And what did you do to help protect yourself? And people will make a list that is pretty normal for pre-painful shift. They will say things like, oh, I was just mad at you. I thought you were in it for the money. Or I thought that my partner should be here. If you only knew what she was like, that she would be the one and not me. And I didn't want to touch my feelings with a 10-foot pole. And I didn't want to be vulnerable. I wanted to talk about everybody else except for myself, right? I wanted to talk about the police officers, my partner, my in-laws, the court system. They wanted to be externally focused and offer as little about themselves as possible. And that's pre-painful shift behaviors, and I want people to know that those are not weird. It is what we do to survive cruelty, and it's what we do to survive male socialization. Maybe a new person who's just in there, we just kind of ask them, what have you brought to class? What kind of things do you think? Does this sound familiar to you, this list we just made? Because we normally expect people when they come to class to be in this position of being externally focused, avoiding feelings, and avoiding talking about themselves. To different degrees, of course. As we move along through the class, we start noticing some changes. Just by participating, by making a couple of lists, maybe naming and check-in 2 ways I've been emotionally abusive, I'm taking a little bit of a step in the painful shift process. Maybe when I identify something that I'm afraid of instead of something I'm angry about, I'm taking a little step in the painful shift process. And so we might talk with the veterans, the people who've been in the class for a long time, and we talk about what's different with you now. What are things that you're able to do now that you were really reluctant, unable to do, or afraid to do when you started? And they will tell us, right? They'll say, oh, I can speak more about myself. I can talk about my own cruel behavior. I don't have to blame and minimize and deny. I can talk about my feelings and I can touch them. It may not be comfortable to touch my adverse feelings, but I don't have to be afraid of them. I can acknowledge that I'm afraid. I can acknowledge that I'm sad, and I don't have to run away from that. And I can just be more responsible for me and let other people be more responsible for themselves. I can be more internally focused instead of externally focused. And that's the mission, right? How do we help people who normally come in very externally focused and guarded in a pre-painful shift position and help them through a course of a variety of activities and interactions and listening to other people's stories? How do we help them acquire as many of the post-painful shift characteristics as they can get, and hopefully understand that it's a lifetime process of, as Alice Miller says, trying to get our perfection back by being less afraid of ourselves and being more willing to be seen in a genuine and authentic sort of way. This whole conversation is providing people a roadmap. It's normalizing the people who are just starting out. It's okay. You don't have to be good at this because no one would expect you to do anything but pre-painful shift behaviors when you're just starting out. One of the tools that we plugged into this curriculum was the process of change chart, which in the Professional Facilitator's Guide you can find on page 2 and page 3. And literally, that is a painful shift chart. The items on the left-hand side in the light blue column are all behaviors that people would use in a pre-painful shift environment, right? And you can use this chart by reading it into the class, having the class read different sections of this. And I really like to pull this process of change chart out because it shows it pretty clearly. If I make the process of change, if I can make the painful shift, that these are some behaviors that I'm going to start recognizing that I am doing in my relationships. And it kind of makes the whole painful shift conversation more concrete. And so if you have time in your class, pick a couple of these sections and have the group members read these out and talk about which ones are they doing well with, which ones are they struggling with, and what do they think the barriers are for moving from a pre-painful shift position to post-painful shift. What's standing in their way? What are they afraid of? And we'll watch the conversation happen as people start processing through and discussing what's keeping them from making the changes that they really would like to make. And so I would encourage you to pull out the process of change chart in this painful shift conversation and just share it with the class and have them begin to explore what does a post-painful shift really look like in relationships. And so I think that people really enjoy this conversation because they can start to see their own change. They can look and go, oh, when I started, I was all mad at everybody else and it was everybody else's fault. And now I really like coming. I find that I feel better after I've been in class and I just get something from it that I don't get anywhere else in my life. And you'll hear people talking and encouraging each other. You know, the veterans who have been in there for a long time will be able to encourage the newer people. Don't you worry, I was the same way. I hated this. I thought Steve was just a big jerk and didn't know what he was talking about. But here I am, and people are telling me I'm different now. And I'm starting to understand the difference between the pre-painful shift when I'm guarded, afraid, externally focused, and the post-painful shift when I'm less afraid of being seen as the person that I am. And so I love this section, and then I love what comes up next week because we go and practice. At the end of the painful shift conversation, I always tell people, hey, next week we're just going to practice. We're going to practice using the post-painful shift characteristics, and we're going to practice them by completing a process log on the last time we were violent. And we're just going to do that process log without any of the pre-painful shift characteristics. We're just going to do it and be willing to be seen, responsible, and accountable, and practice what it would take to really live in a post-painful shift experience. Good luck today, and we'll talk about the process logs and practicing the post-painful shift in the next edition.
Thanks for preparing for your group with us today. If you have questions, stucks, or if there's a section of the curriculum you'd like to hear us explore in more detail, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at reception@familypeaceinitiative.com or submit a contact form on our website. Family Peace Initiative, working to serve our clients and community with compassion, integrity, and expertise.